All right. Right. Should probably put the headphones on. It makes you look official. The headphones make you look official. Let's do this. I hope that you guys can hear me. I don't know. Ah, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is One Mic Black History. I'm doing another live show. I'm your host, Country Boy. And the way this normally works is that I tell a story and that takes about 15, 20 minutes or so. And then afterwards, we will go over um, thoughts, talk about it, shoot the shit. Thank you, brother. Thank you for showing up, man. I'm so excited. I'm excited to be here. I'm trying to do better about putting myself out there. You know, this is tough for me. It's tough for me, but it's good. I have to get my 10,000 hours in of, being live and talking to people and getting comfortable with being in front of the camera and things like that. Anyway, so the plan I had for today is I had this plan earlier where I was going to talk about historical breakdown about sinners, and I'd done this before. I did a couple of videos on it, but since it's on streaming, I decided to rewatch it again, and then I had thoughts. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through like historical context of sinners, and then we're going to talk, shoot the shit. You can ask any questions you have, you can share your thoughts, and we can go through and we'll see how far an hour takes us. It should be dope. It should be dope. So we go ahead and get it cracking. Sorry, I was reading comments. We can get it cracking. So one of the dope things that I love about Sinners is that Ryan Coogler clearly did his homework, and so there are lots of tidbits from the Black experience that are just laid throughout the movie, and if they aren't explained, they might go unnoticed, they might go missed. So what I'm going to do today is just talk about some of the historical perspective. Most of this is centered around Black people, but there's a little bit of history about other cultures here, just a tiny bit. Most of this is the movie is centered about the Black experience, and I'm here to talk about the Black experience from the movie. So when the movie opens, of course, we see and I'm not going to spoil the movie, but I'm going to spoil the movie. Like, it's kind of hard to talk about some of these things without giving away major plot points. I'm not going to spoil the entire movie, but if you haven't watched it, you just got to get some HBO Max. You had to watch HBO Max. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Maybe this will make you want to watch it. When the movie opens, we see Sammy. He's showing up. He's showing up. He's clearly been through some type of trauma. He meets his father. He meets his father at the church, and the father does something weird because he almost expects Sammy to show up and having dealt with some things. And this kind of leads us to this whole idea of Sammy playing the blues, and the blues is filled with sin. And so this is a bit of expectation because he never asked Sammy, "Hey, what happened? You have this nasty scar on your face. Why?" What he's like, you feel with sin. Put down that instrument. Put down what he had left of his guitar. there's no there's no explanation at all. That you only get that from two ways, because he expected this or that, or he was, how Black parents are. You were wrong, and whatever happened here, you still wrong, and we're not going to focus on the why and the how, but that you were in the wrong. You need to rebuke your sinning ways, is basically what he told him. Anyway, fast forward, we first meet Smoke and Stack. They are trying to purchase what would end up being the juke joint from the white man, and he claims that it used to be a sawmill, even though they insinuate that there's blood. There had been blood on the floor, and that this place was used for something else. We know from later on in the movie that he's a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I'm assuming that this was a killing floor, even though I don't think the movie explicitly says what the origins of the sawmill were before. Um, but this brings us back to the very beginning, because we come back to Sammy. This is a couple days prior, and Sammy is picking cotton. Um, this is the first part that kind of needs a bit of historical context, because Clarksdale, Mississippi was created in the 1800s by a man named by the name of John Clark. But for Black folks, it was a place of deep repression and pain. In the early 19th century, most of the Black families in Clarksdale were subjected to the sharecropping system. This was a system where white landowners would have Black folks come and work their crops for them on their land, and then they would pay you money for those crops. Problem was, a lot of people weren't paid in money, and even if you were paid in money, you were never paid enough that would get you out of debt. Some of them were actually paid in plantation scripts, which was like a credit that could only be used at the plantation store. But whatever this was, whatever you got paid or however you got paid, the entire system was designed to keep you in debt for generation after generation. Concurrently, this was 1932 when the time period the movie is set in, and that was the middle of the Great Depression in Mississippi, which is the poorest state in the country. So a lot of Black families were hit the hardest. Unemployment nationwide was already 50%. So a lot of families during that time were pushed towards sharecropping just for the ability to survive. They used to call sharecropping slavery by another name, and it's the reason why a lot of people thought that this was enslavement when they first you saw clips of the movie or you saw it early, because that's what it's designed to look like. It's designed to be extremely close to enslavement. It's debt enslavement, right? The reason why you're here is not you're not forced to be here physically. You're here because you have a perpetual debt that will keep you here, and your kids here, because you can't leave. Um, to add to all of this, this was the height of Jim Crow during the 1930s, and segregation was the law. Black people in Clarksdale weren't just shut out of schools, but they were shut out of decent jobs and just basic rights. Racism at the time was a part of the culture. It was how the system was designed. This is the backdrop that we see Sammy in the movie, where early in the movie when he's sharecropping and the woman asks him where is he playing tonight? Where are we playing? What's going on tonight? So you see that carry that bag and he drops that off. That bag is going to the overseer, who is going to make sure that they meet their quota for for today, for the day. And every person in that movie, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there might be somebody, every Black person in that movie, outside of Smoke, Stack, and the preacher, were sharecroppers. Every single one. Anyway, Smoke, Sammy goes, he meets his father. His father insinuates that he wants him to be a preacher. This is why he's asking him to recite scriptures. He clearly knows the scripture, but is pulled in a different direction. He's being pulled towards the blues. This is where you first see this discussion between him and the blues being sin, right? So the thing about the blues at the time, the blues was created during Reconstruction out of the pain of things like sharecropping in places like Clarksdale, Mississippi. Clarksdale, Mississippi is actually the home of the Crossroads, which is the place where Robert Johnson reportedly sold his soul to the devil for the ability to play the blues. Right. So with that idea, the blues was already kind of in the minds of them as being sin. And it wasn't because it was literally the devil's music. It was because the juke joint and that music would pull people away from organized religion. If you were going to the juke joint on Saturday, it is unlikely that you were showing up on church on Sunday. It was unlikely that you were paying tithes. With organized religion, they were teaching people that their salvation was in the afterlife, and the juke joint was showing people that their reprieve was every Saturday night. You were getting a break from all of the bullshit that we just talked about. every single Saturday night, and that pool was enough for many people. And Sammy had that gift to be able to pull people in, to be able to rock the crowd, to be as you would use today. That was enough for people. That's all they needed. Early in the movie, they actually kind of mention it, and during the uh very very beginning, because they talk about how music will bring you closer to God. And I think Delta Slim, he actually talks about how the blues was the religion that we created. This was our religion. This moment, or you being in there on in the juke joint, was church like. And you can see how that could pull people away from organized religion, and that was a threat. So they deemed it devil. And to them it was anything that pulled you away from the church was the devil. Anyway, so after this, he meets up with Stack and Smoke for the first time. They get in the car and they're riding, and they're kind of talking about their time in Chicago, and he asked him what it was like, and he mentions that Chicago ain't nothing but Clarksdale with tall buildings instead of plantation. So to set this backdrop, Smoke and Stack left Clarksdale, Mississippi during the Great Migration, which started in the 1900s and ended slowed down during the Great Depression, but would pick back up after World War II. So the time that they're coming back would be a slow period for the Great Migration, but still, we're talking about over the entire course, which is about 60 years. We're talking about 6 million Black people that moved from the South, from places like Clarksdale, Mississippi, to places like Chicago, where Smoke and Stack talk about where they came from, where they had just left. They coming back to Clarksdale, Mississippi. But the crazy part about that is that Clarksdale, and this is why when we talk about Ryan Coogler doing his homework, Clarksdale, Mississippi has a railroad, the Illinois Central Railroad, that takes you from Clarksdale, Mississippi to Chicago. The railroad that we see Stack and Sammy go when they meet Delta Slim later in the movie would be the railroad that you would take, that would take you from this place to Chicago. But to the other piece of that, where he talks about how Chicago and Mississippi are exactly the same, it's because the oppression, while they basically weren't used to Black people. This was new to them, having met an influx of Black people. Some cities, like I feel like before the Great Migration, there were only 5,000 Black people in the entire city of Detroit. After or during the Great Migration, or afterwards, it grew to almost 500,000. When you talk about that, is a huge influx of people. That's a town of Black people. And to deal with this, instead of things like Jim Crow and sharecropping, they turn to redlining and sundown towns and race riots. And that fight and that racism was exactly the same. This is exactly the same thing that they were meeting. This is why they came back home, because at least the devil you know is better than one you don't. This is what drove them back to Clarksdale, Mississippi. So after you have this talk between them, when they talk about Chicago, they go and you meet and you see them, and they had the liquor that they stole from the underworld in Chicago, and then they decided they need to split up. Stack and Sammy go to the railroad, and Smoke goes to meet Bo and Grace. All right, Bo and Grace run a little grocery store, and they are part of the Mississippi Chinese community. What happened, how the Mississippi Chinese got here, is that they were brought to the Delta after emancipation, because they were attempting to try to replace the loss of us. After the abolishment of slavery, white planters lost the unpaid labor force, and they brought in Chinese workers as replacement labor. But just like us, they were exploited. They worked hard. They didn't pay very much, and then they were soon tossed aside when they were no longer deemed useful. Many of them opened up grocery stores, usually in black neighborhoods, and then adopted Southern accents. This is why Bo and Grace talk talk the way they do. They adopted his accent after generations of living in the Delta, and they basically ended up in this middle ground between the white population and the black population. They were not fully white. You weren't fully white, but you definitely weren't black. And because of that, it created a distance between the two groups and the Mississippi Chinese community. What you see, and Kugler doesn't really state this in the movie exactly, but what you see is a system of oppression that is used that's created to pit marginalized communities against each other by creating distrust and division. And this is how you create this white hierarchy when you pit the Chinese community or the Hispanic community against black people, instead of everybody focusing on the task at hand, which is the white power structure. But what's different about Bo and Grace in the movie is they clearly have a relationship with Stack and Smoke, because their transaction is not merely business. They could have said in the movie, they could have been like, "Hey, I made you a sign. I did whoop de whoop, all of this. We're done." But they actually showed up to the juke joint and came and helped when they didn't have to. And this shows a love and a loyalty that they didn't need. And they were actually, you could tell they were actually friends, that a friendship had developed. On the flip side, when you look at Stack and Sammy, who end up at the railroad where you first meet Delta Slim, and you first see Sammy and his ability to play the guitar. But what's critical here is that you meet Mary. Mary is Stack's love interest, and originally she appears white. In the movie, she appears white. I thought she was a white lady, but apparently, I mean, later on in the movie, she basically shares that her grandfather was half white or light skinned, and he passed for white. He was white passing, and so she white passed. And this idea of passing goes back to even before the Civil War, even during enslavement, where some enslaved people were much lighter skinned and were able to escape and blend, and then therefore blend in to white society. A good example of this is Sally Hemings. Sally Hemings is, they call her an enslaved concubine, but that's not really a fair assessment of her, because enslaved people can't consent. She was most likely assaulted by Thomas Jefferson. But either way, they had three children together. And eventually Thomas Jefferson would emancipate the three children. When they were after being emancipated, they would fade into white society, blend into white society, because they were mostly white. During that time, it really wasn't about your skin color or how light you were. It was about the enslaved status of the mother. If your mother was enslaved, you were a slave. Even after that, even after emancipation, during Jim Crow, that pressure to pass wouldn't go away. For some, it was the only way you could get a decent job, access to good schools, or even just to stay safe. But all of this came with the price, because for many, you were living behind this white mask that meant cutting ties to your community, cutting ties with your family. And you see this in the movie where Stack is talking to Mary, and he's like, "You need to get out of here. You can't be here. The white community can't see you. They can't see you here. They can't know that you're black. You're passing." Even though I can't imagine that she looks like a white lady. Anyway. So as this is happening, Delta Slim, Sammy, and Stack are after that happens, they all get in the car and they're riding, and two things happen while they're riding. First, they pass by a chain gang. Chain gangs were very similar to sharecropping in that they were just about oppression. It was just about free labor. It wasn't about punishing criminals. It was just a new form of enslavement. Southern states after Reconstruction rolled out this thing called black codes. These were laws designed to arrest black people for almost anything. Loitering, not having a job, uh, um, not being hired by a white person, or just even acting suspicious. And what would end up is that once you locked in prison, you were forced to hard labor, shackled together in chain gangs, working long hours in the heat. It wasn't about justice. It was purely about profits. States use these prisoners to build roads, highways, instead of hiring workers. And then they would hide all this under the guise of being tough on crime. So they would use this as a way to win white votes and also maintain racial control while getting free labor. It was diabolical. It's diabolical. And you still see this. A lot of want to see Alabama, and I know Alabama and Phoenix try to bring back, if they don't, try to bring back chain gangs. Additionally, Delta Slim also talks about how his friend was lynched right after this. This is right before they do the spontaneous singing number that they have. And during that time, in 1932, lynching was the ultimate form of terror. As we talk about keeping the racial hierarchy and keeping Black folks subjugated, which is an ongoing theme within the movie, is that it wasn't about violence, about sending a message that to stay in your place or else. And Mississippi at the time was one of the worst offenders. From 1882 to 1968, Mississippi had the highest number of recorded lynchings in the country. In the country. And this is the backdrop. This is the backdrop of the movie. This is how we got here. This movie is all about oppression and Black people and just looking for a break. And this basically is where the juke joint would come in, because that juke joint was that break. It was your time away. It was a break from all of what was going on in society at the time, but it also was a place where you could speak freely and not be in front of the white gaze. It would give you a break from the white gaze, so you could dance and I could talk and I could laugh, I could talk about my boss, and nobody here is going to say anything or judge me, because we all here going through the same BS, the same things. All right. And this is another reason why we see in the movie when we're introduced to Remick, and we know that Remick has to be introduced, that he has to be let in. They're reluctant. They don't know at the time that Remick is a vampire. They don't want them to come in because they are white. All right. This juke joint was a reprieve from people like Remick. I don't want to be in the same place as you. I came here to get away from you, to be a break. This was supposed to be a break from you. I have to deal with my white overseer all week. I want to be able to be comfortable. And as soon as you show up and as soon as you come in here, you're going to make the vibe. You're going to throw the vibes off. The vibes are going to be weird. So even while I'm watching the movie, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to let you in. I don't know you. Why are you here? Like, no, you can't come in. No, absolutely not. And this kind of brings us to the villain of the movie, who is the most interesting character in the movie, and it's Remick. He's an ancient vampire who he himself is originally from Ireland, and this is what makes this this is what makes him interesting. It's basically what he represents, because the vampirism is basically a metaphor for racism. And Irish immigrants, when they first came to the United States, they faced quite a bit of their own discrimination. And Remick was once a victim of that, who was promised freedom and belonging, and over time he was absorbed by vampirism and absorbed into white supremacy, and went from being the outsider to the enforcer, to a member of white supremacy. It was not that long ago that the Irish were called inside out Negroes, and a couple 50 years later, they're the police. They're beating up on niggas. And one of the interesting things that he does is the first people that he adopts are are the white people, the local white population. Members of the first people that he turns are members of the Ku Klux Klan, but he quickly spills over into the black community and and is attracted to the juke joint. And this is a bit of a metaphor for cultural appropriation and how within black spaces we create this music and this creativity and they get invaded and exploited and drained and it is copied and repackaged and watered down, usually without credit, and we rarely profit from that profit. That money is really given back to the original creators. So once again, this kind of speaks to why you wouldn't let them in, because this space was not for you, but also talks about how we're constantly being exploited and whether or not you're talking about rock and roll or you know TikTok dances or slang terminology, AAVE, all those things. It's exactly what Remick is doing. This is not, Remick is Elvis Presley, and he's also how woke became a slur. This is all of these things. He is a representation of all these things. But another piece of Remy, this is why, once again, what makes it so interesting is that he's drawn to Sammy and the blues. And they talk about early in the movie that, while the blues and playing and music and, places like this will draw you closer to, will draw you closer to religion, closer to God, it also has a possibility to invite evil in. And this is what you see with Remick. Remick is drawn to Sammy because of his talent, but it's not just that Sammy has a amazing talent for the blues and to draw people in, but Remick, the vampirism in the movie keeps a little bit of himself, keeps a little bit of his soul. And there seems to be this longing for what Sammy has because he can see what's left of his humanity in Sammy. And this is why he wants I want this. I want to be able to, taste or touch a little bit of my humanity again before, it's like a package from home while you're in prison or a call from home. This is like him reaching out for a little bit of the humanity he's lost hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And lastly, this is interesting. And I got this idea from Khalil Green because I would have thought this from on my own. And he talks about Remick being a master manipulator, almost cult-like, in very similar to a Jim Jones type character in Jonestown. And if you understand the story of Jim Jones and Jonestown, you see that he started out as a mixed church, even though gradually his church would become a majority black population. And he offered basically a reprieve from a place where everybody was equal, a reprieve from oppression and what was going on in the day, wrapped in religion. And you can see Remick as a cult-like figure that is dragging black people, sucking black people into vampirism, offering community safety and hope, only to give them only to exert his control and end up in tragedy. If you're not familiar with the story of Jonestown, Jim Jones takes his flock. They go to, I want to say South America. I want to say it's Guyana. And ultimately, they all 600 they all die from a mass suicide by ingesting cyanide laced Kool-Aid. This is where the term "don't drink the Kool-Aid" comes from, because basically that's a dark joke. From Jim Jones and Jonestown. And apparently now you can take a tour of it. I would not advise you doing that. Don't go there. Don't go there. But we're gonna try to go ahead and land this plane, because towards the end of the movie, we find out that Remick is not the real villain here. He's not the ultimate villain here. He's Ryan Coogler wants to show you that real villains aren't imaginary monsters. They're real people. The real monsters here in Sinners is the Ku Klux Klan, who makes their presence known near the very very end. During this time, during the 1930s, the Klan wasn't nearly the massive powerhouse they had once been. Their numbers had dwindled from millions that was terrorizing communities and held huge political sway in the South. By 1932, their numbers had plummeted to around 30 to 50,000 due to scandals and infighting and resistance from us. But they weren't gone. This is why at the very beginning of the movie, when they say, hey, we don't want to see you and your Klan buddies, or we're gonna put two between your eyes. And he's like, the Klan doesn't exist no more. He partially right. The Klan was not nearly as prevalent as they had once been. But with fewer numbers, they still were a problem, especially for Black people. They still had rallies and parades and secret meetings. And though their influence had shrunk, they still knuckle deep in the ideology and violent white supremacy and attack on Black voters and fear of immigrants. That was very much alive. It's very much alive. Sinners in this movie, they're not just a generic villain, a reminder of the everyday terrors that the Black community face, and that the real horrors weren't supernatural. They was real people that really happened, that were terrorizing Black communities and lynching Black folks and burning crosses and smiling in your face during the day. In the end, because I'm not gonna tell you how the movie ends. It's great. Go watch it. But while this was a horror movie, this movie was knee deep into the Black experience. This was really a testament of Black people in not only just the South, but primarily in Clarkdale, Mississippi. Ryan Coogler had done his homework, and he understood why he chose Clarksdale, Mississippi, and why he chose this time period. And this story was about the power of the blues, Black resilience, the strength of the Black community, and our connection to other groups like the Mississippi Chinese and the Choctaw, even though they weren't in the movie all that much. They just had one scene. And I didn't talk about them, but even them, those were real Choctaw, and they were really excited about the idea that their group was represented correctly. This is one of your very few times that they represented in a movie, and they're represented by members of their group. So anyway, I hope you like this. I love the movie. I enjoy it. I don't mind talking about this. I can talk about this joint all day. So I guess now we'll open up to some questions. I'll talk. I'll shoot the shit. You can tell me what you what's on your mind, what you have going on, what you think. I will say this one thing because I'm about to switch gears completely, because since we're talking about what's on my mind. I wish that I could watch the Cosby Show. I've been dying to watch the Cosby Show on streaming, and it's just nowhere. It just doesn't exist. And I know he was, it is what it is, but it's a good show, man. It's a good show with a positive Black fan. I could maybe I want to watch, maybe I want to see Lisa Bonet or Theo. Maybe I like Theo. Like I should be able to watch the Cosby Show and enjoy it separate from what Bill Cosby has done. And it's nowhere on streaming, and it's a ton of people who've done terrible things I can still listen to their music, I can still find their music, I can still watch their shows. Kevin Spacey's still on Netflix, R. Kelly's still on the radio. Like, why can't I watch the Cosby Show? Now granted, you can buy it, but it's $2.99. It's $2.99 an episode. I got like 9 seasons. That's not fair. Anyway, that's my rant. I'm moving on. I'm not gonna say nothing else about it. We're gonna open up the questions. A little bit of the questions. Let me see. We can bring this up on the big screen. All right. Yeah. Acting suspicious. Anything could be acting suspicious. Like it doesn't walking while black, being in the space while black. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much, man. And you know, to this point, I usually do this on my off episode, on my off weeks. Um, I was doing every week, and then I got back in the workforce. I started being a working man again. Um, I work in cloud. I work in cloud. So once I went back to work. I couldn't keep up the schedule with doing this every single week because it requires so much work and to with research. So I started doing every other week. So I started to supplement that. Started going live, and would talk about episodes of Black history, things like that. Um, but I have an episode since I didn't do last week because my wife was out of town. I have an episode to come out tomorrow about the Freedom House ambulance service, which is super dope. I love this story. It talks about the first paramedics who were black, who were in Pittsburgh's Hill District. They represented Pittsburgh's Hill District because at the time, if you called the police service, you wouldn't get a if you called the ambulance or 911, you would typically either get a hearse, possibly a hearse, maybe even the police. And some well-to-do neighborhoods would purchase a private ambulance service. But if you lived in a poor neighborhood, you didn't know who was going to show up. And oftentimes for the people of Hill District, the police would show up. And, if you're black, if you like us, if I'm sick, the last person I want to see is the police. if I'm having a medical emergency, the last person I want to see. Didn't you arrest my cousin yesterday? I don't want to see you. That's crazy. So basically what happened, drink some water, boy. I got to dry mouth. Basically what happened during that time is that after emancipation, white planters were down bad. They were down bad before that because they had been living off their parents' money. And while they were called planters, they didn't know how to plant anything. The knowledge was in us. We're the ones who knew how to plant things, how to grow things. So all of their money was tied up in land assets, which some of those got seized during the Civil War, and people assets. That was us. So afterwards, they could not survive without someone. I need someone to work these fields, and it can't be me because I don't know what I'm doing. I got to find a way to get people back on this plantation for as cheaply as possible. Preferably free. This is where you come up with the idea of sharecropping. And I kind of talked about sharecropping. Originally, it wasn't sharecropping. They gravitated to sharecropping. They had a different system very, very early on, which was even closer to slavery, where basically you had a white overseer and he would watch over you to make sure you made your quota through the day. They evolved to sharecropping because we demanded a little bit more autonomy from the system. So basically what sharecropping would grow, if like you had to meet your quota over a lengthy period of time. It wasn't just, hey, I need you to meet all your quota today, or somebody looking over your shoulder. It would be, hey, show me what you got, and then we'll deal with that from there. It was you were mostly autonomous, and this allowed for the possibility of kids being able to go to school, for them to be able to grow side gardens, maybe do side projects. Because if you met your quota, that meant that your time was your own. After that, you could do other things. Oh wow, how long was sharecropping a thing? I don't know when it was formally abolished. It was definitely, I think it faded out of practice maybe sometime in the 40s and 50s. It was heavy. Sorry, I did not put this up here. It was heavy into 1940s, 1950s. And I swear you probably could find a black person in Mississippi sharecropping today. Because I feel like it was never formally abolished. I just think it fell out of favor as a method as people become educated. You got generations of people. Because let's say early on, directly from enslavement, black folks didn't know anything else. You may have never left your plantation. You wasn't sure what's going on across, up the street. The only thing that you really was aware of is, how to grow crops or how to tend the plantation. So you coming back and sharecropping was, I don't want to say made things easy, but it made sense because it was something that you were used to doing. But if you had a system where now I could send my kids to school and they could grow and learn and do something else, the last thing I want you to do is to be here to sharecrop. Once you leave here and go do something else, this is the last generation of us that's going to do this. So my understanding is that it simply fell out. It simply fell out of favor as opportunities opened up for black people as they left and via the Great Migration, which moved mass amounts of black folks to the south. I mean, to the north. You went to Chicago, you ended up in a factory. You ended up doing factory work. You weren't on a plantation anymore. Ah, man, I can't see. So anyway, um, one of the interesting things for me about the whole thing, about sharecropping, about this entire thing is that um how it was designed to mimic slavery, how it was designed to keep that exploitation there, and how we ended up falling into a lot of the same traps that we were, that happened during enslavement. Like, yes, we, we were free, but I still didn't have any opportunities. I still didn't have a place of my own. I was still kept in a very similar trap to what I had seen before, and it made things very difficult. And this is where you get like black codes and Jim Crow and grandfather laws and things that are designed to discriminate against you and us being able um, to vote, all those things, because you could vote, then you could change the system. And I don't want that. I don't want you being able to change the situation. I need you under my thumb, under the thumb of oppression, you know. So like it was and to go back to sentence just a little bit, that time period that he chose, like it was the perfect time period for the story we were going to tell. But if we're just typically talking about sharecropping, this could have been any time from after 1870 up until 1932, 1940. That could have been any time period. All of that time period, they could have been sharecropping, and the system would have been almost exactly the same. You would have been stuck under the same thumb, under the same bit of oppression. All right. All right. Um, I don't know if I got nothing else. I don't know if I have anything else to talk about. I'm gonna go through these questions, see if I missed a lot. I missed a lot. Oh yeah, this is new. This is new for me. I just started doing this because originally this channel was mostly faceless, and I kind of liked it. I kind of liked it that way, but once again, as I started going to a bi-weekly for episodes, I wanted to find a way to get out, to see people, talk to people, meet you guys, be able to introduce myself. But I didn't know how I could do this without having guests on or having like someone else help me, and they weren't always available. And how do I introduce you to what I do or talk about Black history if I'm interviewing a guest like that? The show is about the guests. I wanted to be able to talk to you guys, I mean face to face, but one to one. And while that was a huge hurdle for me to get, I'm still uncomfortable. I know you can see me fidgeting. It's a huge hurdle for me. It's something that I'm trying to get used to, trying to get to talking, getting used to talking to people. And early on in my channel, if you'd watched some of my early episodes, they were rough. And I understand that the early lives are going to be rough, that I have to kind of get used to doing this and talking to people and making this seamless. And so I think I think we should be very, very concerned, because with everything, as you see with this, everything comes back to Black people. Everything comes back to us. We always It always points back to us. And while, the immigration laws, and while he's focused on, Hispanics and illegal immigrants, there's no way that this doesn't eventually point back to Black people, because we're always the targets. We're always eventually the targets of things. So yeah, I am fairly concerned about things, even though I tried not to keep my head in that fire too much, because it's so overwhelming. It's like ingesting a fire hose. It is so difficult to listen to the news from the current administration, because it's daily. It's daily. And I follow a lot of other, Black history creators, and a lot of them are knuckle deep into activism and what's going on with the current administration, because it's an easy path to follow. If you start doing history, getting into activism and talking about the current administration is like, it's an easy skip. uh and it's just exhausting. It's exhausting from them. Like, listening to the current administration is exhausting, but also listening to them every day is exhausting. I get to the point I'm like, skip, skip, skip. I can't. Yeah, they are. They absolutely are picking low hanging fruit, and they're they're easy targets, extremely easy targets. But it's at some point, that is, that gun always ends up getting pointed back to us. S- Pointed back to us. You always, matter of fact, the way the racial hierarchy works is, what ended up happening with the Irish is that once they get adopted into, because we talked about this with Remick, but what happened with them is that, hey, you could be white too. Cubans, you could be white too. All you have to do is just hate Black people. Like, that's the bar for the entry into whiteness, is like, just not like them. It's extremely low hanging fruit. They don't ask anything from you. They don't ask for much from you, but they will take that away from you very, very rapidly too. So, on one hand, it's a low barrier of entry to say, um, hey, you're now white, you're one of us. But tomorrow they could be like, these Cubans out here, send them right back. It's 80 miles. It's 80 miles from Miami. Put them right back on a boat and get up out of here. Oh wow. Um, that's a funny story. So if you look back on the early episodes of this channel, I was doing a roundtable discussion with the homies called The Cut. And I didn't even delete those episodes. I just kept them there. So, like, if you look back like 2019, there's some of those episodes are still there. But um right before COVID, I had this idea that I just want to do something different. I didn't uh, How many times can you talk about 51st dates? How many times can we do this? How many times can I have this discussion? I was over it. I was like, long before we got to the point where people were like, take away their podcasting mics, and you're sick of people talking about the same things in the same discussion. We had talked about those things, and I had already become sick of them. And I was like, it's got to be something else that I could do that can offer more value. But also, like, I understood that in that genre that you had to sell people your personality, and it was really difficult. Like, I didn't have the personality. None of these guys had a personality to really like explode this thing. If you were looking for a roundtable discussion, you would be you listen to Kev on stage, who would talk about the same subject. Why would you listen to me? There's no reason to. But So I had to lean in things that I was good at. And one of the things that I had a passion for was Black history. I used to have this homie. I don't remember. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was a white guy. He lived in Canada, and he did an episode on the Tulsa Race Massacre. And I remember listening to it and thinking this was dope. This was the best thing I ever heard. But, however, this should be told by somebody. This should be told by us. I should tell this story. It's not to say he shouldn't do this story, because he can open up to an audience that probably would never listen to me. But there should be a version of this story being told by somebody that looks like us. Like, we should really be out here doing this thing like FUBU. It should be for us, by us. This is our history. We should be telling it. So that put the idea in my head, and I didn't really know how I was going to do it. And the early episodes were real rough, but we kind of just worked our way through it and got comfortable with the idea of creating episodes and talking about Black history. And it really exploded around the Black Cadillac episode. That's the one that really took me. I had about 7,000 subscribers at the time, and then I went from around 7,000 to 50 or so almost overnight. Like overnight, I had 50,000 subscribers, and I haven't really looked back since. And every day I try to get better and do it. But this is just a one man. It's just me. There's nobody else. Like my wife, she listens to the episodes and she supports me, but she's not on the payroll. It's on the payroll. It's just me. So I try to do my best. If you watch and you see errors and you're like, why is this way? That's because I'm figuring my way out through it. The same, I am trying new things, and this is what leads me here to doing this. Is I'm trying new things and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and what people like and what they don't like. And some videos do really well, and other videos they don't like that so much. But we're trying to do things that I think will interest people or that they'll like. And sometimes they don't, it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. But I've been enjoying the ride. I've been enjoying the ride. And this is where the evolution of me kind of getting more in front of the camera really comes from, is that, okay, now that you've been faced this for a while, maybe you need to get out and come and talk to the people and find a new way to introduce yourself, or a new way to tell these stories. Because when I'm telling the stories are based on the script. But when I'm here, when I'm telling these stories, these are just outlines. These are almost off the cuff. Like I read a little bit, but a lot of that is just like, hey, tell this story, say this, do this, and then we work our way through it. And that's what I really enjoy about these lives. Is not only this give and take and being able to talk to you guys, but when I tell these stories are being told like just live and in living color. Live in living color. I'll be honest with you, man. This whole storytelling thing, I kind of fell into it. I didn't know that this was going to be this was going to be my way, or what I was going to do. Like I said, I had a passion for history, but it wasn't necessarily Black history. It was just history. I loved history in general. What drove me to Black history is because I have a love for history, and I'm Black. Naturally, I should be telling the story of my people. And as you dig into it, one of my friends once asked me, like, how does it not radicalize you? And I was like, it does a bit. It does a bit radicalize you. It does take you, and you're like, I don't like that. Oh, I see patterns that I don't like, or things that I don't like, or people doing things that I've seen before. I always like to talk about school vouchers. School vouchers are that way. School vouchers are rooted in, racial segregation, the way where they come from. Like today, you could say, oh, it gives you choice and you can go take the school you want to, but originally it was used to separate you from little Black kids, and it would close down their schools or put them in inferior schools, and then give you a voucher that you can go and take wherever you wanted to go. And so you want me to support that in 2025 when you use that to oppress my parents? Like, no, that's bullshit. I'm not doing that. That's absurd. So you kind of see those patterns, and it radicalizes you a little bit. Like, to that point, I'm gonna tell y'all the story. I probably shouldn't tell this on this live, but man, whatever. One of my homies he dates a white girl. He told her, he was like, yo, Mike has a Black History channel, and he doesn't approve of our relationship. He don't approve of us. I was like, wait a minute. I don't know. I mean, I know him. He the homie, but I don't know her. Like, I don't, I don't have any problem with either one of y'all. I don't know either one of y'all, and I'm not making any determination. And just because I have Black History Channel, don't mean I'm out here just hating white folks. I don't hate them, and I it definitely don't hate Becky. That's not her name. I'm just making up a name. Like, don't call her. I definitely don't hate Becky. If I'm gonna have beef with somebody, it would be with you, brother. The beef would be with you, you know. But also, I feel some type of way. Like, who you think I am, man? I'm not Malcolm X. I'm not super militant. I tell these stories, and these stories have radicalized me a little bit. But I'm not out here. Like, the stories are what they are, and you are what you are. You love who you love, and I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm just judge you from afar. Let me stop. All right, we've hit about 56 minutes ish. 56 minutes ish. I guess I'll go ahead and land this plane. You know, I guess that story is probably the story to go out on. I have an episode come out tomorrow about Freedom House. It is going to be fire. It's going to be dope. I might even put the joint in the comments. Let y'all check it out early. You know, I think it's a great episode. I never know how these episodes are going to do. They might do 1 million views. They might do they might do 1,000. Who knows? I think it's dope. I think you're going to love it. Check that episode out. It comes out tomorrow. It'll be out tomorrow at about 7 in the morning. Also, I'm gonna keep these lives up. Next week, I don't have an episode coming out. I think I got a family reunion. I might not do next week. It may be the week after next, but we'll see. We'll see what schedule takes us. Thank you guys. Thank you, Citizen Morgan and Donna Joe, for showing up, man. I love you guys. I'm glad that you guys showed up, and I really appreciate your support. Also, hey, subscribe to my Substack. Boop. This is the QR code. It's dope. I put out I do notes almost every single day where I talk about, you know, facts from Black history. I wish this is something that I could do in YouTube. I guess I could do in community, but I feel like I would just I would be sick of me. I put out Black history notes almost every single day. I also write an article once a week. Some of them will tread over stories that I've done, videos, but you know, things change, people change. I'm getting into this writing thing. I'm trying to be better. I might do an episode with family reunion in the background. Matter of fact, I might talk about family reunions. I think Bill Lewis talking about family reunions were down 41%. I was like, oh, I mean, granted, to this point, this is not my family reunion. This is my wife's family reunion. Her family get together. My family does not, because my family they act the way they're a little bougie. They're a little bougie. They don't get up. It's hard. I don't ever see them unless somebody passes away, and that sucks. But I don't have the juice within them to say, hey, let's all get together. I'm not like, I have to come from my dad and his siblings. It needs to come from them, and you know. So anyway, check out the episode tomorrow. Hit me on Substack. I'm there all the time. It's dope. I'm trying to branch out and do more of these lives. I'm going to make these Saturdays at 3:00. We're going to come here. I'm going to pick a subject. We're going to talk. We're going to talk about that subject. We're going to shoot. And afterwards, we're going to shoot the shit. Probably take it for about an hour. Yeah, I got social medias down here. You can follow them, not follow them. I don't care. I don't really care for social media like that. Thank you guys for coming out. God bless you. Good night.